Welcome back, folks. Welcome to a very special episode of the Soul Talk podcast. I feel like every episode is special, but I'm particularly excited about this one, and I think you are going to be as well. I think we're going to dive into a topic and a theme that has been actually top of my mind, something I've been thinking about for many, actually a few years now, to be honest, very intensely. As you know, it's a part of my work, but the guest we're going to speak to today has written a book about this particular topic, all about ancestral healing. And I think it's going to be powerful. She's an energy practitioner, transformational coach with a PhD in economics. So that's an interesting combination. And after 15 years in finance and academia, she decided to pursue a path in helping people release their pain, reclaim their power. She's trained in flower essences and family constellations, and it's going to be an amazing interview. I feel it. Welcome to the conversation, Anuradha Dayal-Gulati. Welcome to Soul Talk. By the way, folks, she wrote the book, Heal Your Ancestral Roots, Release the Family Patterns That Hold You Back. If you haven't checked out this book, I have a feeling you're going to want to check out this book. So welcome to Soul Talk.
Thank you, Koot. Thank you so much for having me.
I've been looking forward to the conversation. When I heard about the book, I thought, oh, this is something I want to talk about. And so I'm really excited. Before I dive into all the stuff I want to ask you, I'm always curious, like how people got on the path to doing what they're doing, economics, finance, yet like here, flower essence is it's a slightly different path. And so, what happened?
Well, I think when I was young, I wanted to change the world. You know how we all do when we're young. We have these grandiose ideas.
Hmm.
And that's what led me to economics. And I felt, in India, there's so much poverty. I felt like economics was the way forward. And so I came to the US to do my PhD in economics. And I taught at Northwestern University. Before that, I worked at the International Monetary Fund. So it was, 15 years of that. And then I think there's something that happens to a lot of people. One day, I had to be taken into the hospital. I had a health problem and I had to be taken into the ER. And I don't think I'm unusual in that sense. A lot of people say, you know what, put it behind me, get back to life as usual. And so I was like, okay, back to everything, get going. Don't think about it too much. Pick yourself up. And then one night, out of nowhere, I had to go back into the hospital. And I know I started to feel like scared, like what's going on. But I came out second time. And I think it was really when I had to go in for the third time that I started to feel really scared. Like I didn't know what was going on. And I could tell that the doctors didn't know really what was going on, what was happening to me. But I had a really dear friend, and she's still a dear friend. And she came to see me in the hospital. And she said, how many times do you want to go through this? What is it going to take for you to change? And I kind of knew what she wanted me to do because she was into alternative healing, all of that stuff that was, something that I had left behind that was not part of me anymore. I might have seen that in India, but you know what? Now I was in America. I had this sort of American lifestyle. That wasn't me anymore. But something about her words really struck a chord within me. And I literally willed myself out of the hospital that day. I willed myself out because I had a kid in daycare and I was going to go home. And I went to see a Chinese medicine practitioner in Chicago. And that was, I got better, I healed. And that was the start of a new path, a new life. I continued to work in academia, but already the shift had started. I was now starting to explore different healing modalities, different ways of thinking, living. And that's how I got into flower essences and then the ancestral energy work.
Wow, wow, wow. I'm curious, the ancestral energy work. You wrote a book about it. Um, I'm very excited to like dive into this topic. How do our ancestors in ancestral energy affect our lives today? Like how does it manifest? Because I think most people are walking through life we're just living our life, and we're creating what we're creating. We're succeeding, we're failing, we're having relationship cycles, and we're like, if it's up to me, it's all me. But I think over the years, I've been very curious myself in terms of seeing how certain energetic patterns of my father, who's passed away, has impacted me. Like when my father passed away, there were certain things I found out that made sense about how I felt about certain things. And so I think most of us, because we can't see it, we're like, no, I make my own life happen, right? And so I want you to talk about like how does our ancestors and the energy affect our lives?
Yeah. And I think you already sort of alluded to it when you started to see the patterns.
Mm-hmm.
I think what happens is we get sort of stuck and I literally feel like we get stuck because there are things that repeat in our life, whether they're relationship patterns, whether they're emotional response patterns. And we say, you know what, I'm not going to be the one who sort of loses my temper. You get triggered to
Mm-hmm.
it. So we have these emotional response patterns. And then we have like event patterns, like things that happen in our life again and again. We're like, I can't believe this happened to me again.
Mm-hmm.
And we think it's us. And the stuckness, sort of manifests itself in like you're doing your best, you're trying your best, and nothing is moving, or it feels like this
Mm-hmm.
thing isn't moving. And that's when you know that there's just something ancestral. It didn't begin with you. It
Mm-hmm.
began with your ancestors before you. And that actually is the ancestral energy field calling out for healing. And what do I mean by that? It's not like you wake up and you think about your ancestors. Some of us are in touch with our parents. Sometimes we don't know our grandparents, and we certainly don't think about those who came before. But in a lot of Eastern traditions, even in Western Europe, certainly in Africa, and almost everywhere in the world, South America, our ancestors are not just our parents and grandparents. They include those who came up to 7 generations before. And our ancestral energy field is the energy of unresolved emotions and experiences. And that's what we're carrying. We also get the blessings of our
Yeah,
lineage. We get, when we take it for granted, we don't think about it. We have a
yeah,
roof for our head. We have, certain gifts, talents, skills. We're like, we don't pay so much attention
yeah,
to it,
yeah.
but we notice the challenges because that's how the ancestral energy field is communicating through the
When you say
image.
ancestral energy field, like what do you mean? Like, because I know there's people that will be thinking ancestral field. What do you mean field? Where like energy field? What is it? Where is it? How does it function? And like, how is the energy passed down?
So so the way I think about field, the way I sort of my understanding of it is there are, if you think about it, in 7 generations, that's like 254 mothers and fathers that needed
Wow.
existed for you to be sitting here today.
Mm,
That's almost, even if we take a 30-year span, that's like 230 years. And a
mm,
lot can happen. You can have, war, bankruptcy, immigration, migration, famine,
mm,
murder,
mm,
suicide. There's so much that can happen
mm,
that is traumatic. And that energy of the trauma, it gets frozen in us. And now we know it even gets passed down through the DNA.
mm,
And it creates like the frozenness is actually an inability to move forward through the trauma. Now, I'm not saying that it happens to everybody, but there is something that gets frozen inside of us in terms of an emotional pattern. And one of the most common responses is the inability to express love.
Mm.
And when that ability to express love is not there, because that's the portal that gets shut down, we become snappy, sarcastic, violent, we withdraw, we don't communicate. Our relationships get affected. We may not know how to engage in life. We are fearful. We don't want to take risk. We're not open to life because we're protecting ourselves. And those responses sort of get passed down subtly or consciously. And that's what we are carrying. But life itself is expansive. So the ancestral energy field, the ancestors sort of get stuck in that space where their souls can't evolve. And we are the part of them that lives on this earth. So when we heal, we allow them to heal, we allow them to evolve. And I think, Buddhism speaks of that too, of this realm which is sort of populated by suffering souls. And yet when we evolve, when we heal, the souls of our ancestors can evolve. We carry this tremendous task, this tremendous sort of responsibility of being the leading edge of our lineage. And when we heal, we are also the ancestors of 7 generations to come. So when we heal, we change things for those going forward.
You triggered a sort of a side question now that's making me think. When we heal, we can impact and free the ancestors. We impact them. But what happens, like, in terms of let's say we bring reincarnation into the equation, right? But what if my grandfather has reincarnated into this life and now he's my nephew or he's somewhere else? Where are the ancestors? Do you see how do we heal? How do I heal my great grandfather or grandfather when he's maybe walking around on this earth now, if there is such a thing as reincarnation? Does that? I'm not asking it in the right way, but I'm just trying to like conceptualize the idea.
So, Kut, I'm going to share my own limited thinking, okay?
Yeah.
But the way I understand it is, and when I say East, I'm using the word East because I'm from the East. But I think this is true in so many cultures, not just that part of the world.
Yeah.
Soul karma is what we came to heal in this lifetime. And, it is the lessons we have to learn. It is what we need to do that is based on our previous lifetimes. And the family in which we are born, the family karma, is the crucible or the container in which or through which we are going to learn the lessons and heal. And so when we talk about past lives, that's feeding into our soul karma or what we have come here, the lessons we've come to learn. And whoever is our family, mothers and fathers born again or born as nephews, children, that's all in that family karma package. And, when you say it's sometimes like if I had a really terrible relationship with my father, I could end up having a terrible relationship with my son or my grandchild. And let me tell you what I mean by this, because when I started working with clients originally, I had a woman who came to me and she said, I really want to improve my relationship with my daughter. Her daughter had graduated, moved to the West Coast, didn't want to have much to do with her mother. And she said, I really want to improve this relationship with my daughter. And then it turned out that she didn't have a good relationship with her own mother. She was not on talking terms with her mother. So when you think about it, this is a transgenerational pattern. And that's how ancestral legacy makes itself felt, through the presence of these transgenerational patterns. And I started to notice these patterns in my own life. Now, the pattern was a little bit more subtle because my mother, my sister, and I, each of us lived in 3 different cities. We hadn't grown up in those cities. We hadn't gone to school in those cities. And each of us was sort of struggling to conform and fit in. We didn't feel like we were part of the dominant culture. And there was this sense of not belonging.
Mm.
And I was like, this is really strange. What is going on? And that's when I started to recognize, oh, this is a transgenerational pattern. Even my grandmother had experienced it.
Mm.
And when the ancestral energy makes itself felt in these ways, that's when I went into the ancestral training work, because I felt like, am I going crazy? Like, what is going on? And actually, there are, laws that sort of govern this ancestral energy field. And I'm calling it a field because it's not just your mother and father, it includes your grandparents, it actually includes aunts, uncles, it includes people who your family might have harmed, people who might have harmed your family. And so there are sort of invisible laws, just like there are laws of the universe, there are laws that govern this field. And when those laws get violated, we suffer. And so the part of healing that we're doing is like kind of repairing this energy field.
What is
And,
you said laws? Like, could you clarify what you mean by laws? Like
so
some of those laws,
or principles, like principles
principles. Yeah.
seems more, one of and Bert Hellinger was the one who he spent many years in South Africa and then sort of came up with this modality of family constellation therapy. And one of the things he said is parents give and children receive. Now, on the face of it, it sounds so like, okay, yeah, parents give children, but parents give life. And because of that, they give more than can be repaid or returned. And so then, what happens is, as children, we're sort of hardwired to make our parents happy. We want to make them happy. If a mother is unhappy, a daughter might spend a lot of energy trying to make her mother happy, or a son might try to make his father happy. But that is something we can never do, because some of it is conditioning. Some of it is the things that may make your parents unhappy may have nothing to do with you. And so so many religious traditions actually say, honor your parents, honor your ancestors. And it's not, I looked at that and I was like, wow, they're not saying love your parents. They're saying like honor them. And I was like, what does that really mean? And I think it just means, accept them. Accept the part that you will never see that made them who they are. And when you accept them, you release your expectations of them. You actually, in some way, free yourself. And ancestral healing is just simply that, releasing the feeling that you're a victim of what came before you, releasing the feeling that you're a victim of your lineage.
Got it. Like, I'm just so fascinating. Let's say someone's parents, grandparents, did some negative stuff, right? Maybe they kept slaves, or they were racist, or some perpetuated some kind of abuse. Would the children or the grandchildren automatically reap the karma of that, or not necessarily?
So not necessarily automatically, because every member of the subsequent generation takes on a piece of the healing.
Let's just say let's just say my father, is abusive, or cause pain and havoc to certain people. As an immediate, would I have an immediate effect of that?
It's possible if you take on that piece of the transgenerational healing, and it can show up as in a ceiling on financial success.
Oh,
It was like, supposing you were Caucasian or whatever and had slave owners of a different race, you might find yourself drawn to a woman of that race. This is how we're making amends. You might find yourself adopting children of that race. You might find
wow.
yourself maybe a victim of an accident
An
from
accent.
there's
Mm,
so many things. In Hinduism, they use the word prarabdha karma, which means the karma that came before you, which is all on.
mm.
We don't know everything that came before you.
It's interesting because you're like, okay, if let's just say your parent did a certain thing, the race thing, right? Let's just say they had slaves or something, and then all of a sudden you're a victim of an accident or something of someone from the opposite race. Karmically, like, wow, it kind of like I can see what you're talking about. Yet, let's say someone is in that situation, they can't see it. How do they discern that? How do they come to see that to make sense while they're in it? Because while they're in it, hey, that person actually did do something to them in this moment. That person like mugged me, or they beat me, or they did something. And yeah, I mean, from the expanded sense, oh, something is rebalancing. But they also the thing did happen. So how do we navigate that understanding, awareness, and reconciliation? How do we come to peace with that on those two levels?
You're asking harder questions than to answer. But let's. So somebody called me up the other day. She said, "Oh, I'm obsessed with this past life stuff. I really want to know my past lives." And I think this is the part that you're alluding to. That there's a part of us that wants to know: did I do something to deserve this? Because our
Mm,
reaction is always, "What did I do to deserve this?"
mm,
And yet, if the question we ask ourselves is different, which is, how do I move forward?
mm,
What is it that I do now? Then the path opens up wide,
mm,
because everything that happens to us at that moment, we have a choice. How do I choose to move forward?
mm.
And, when you look at the Paralympic athletes, they chose to move forward a different
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah.
You look at people who have taken what were challenges and converted them into like ways in which they heal the world. Um, we always have that freedom to choose the path forward.
Mm,
And when we let go of being a victim, we open the path forward in many
mm,
different ways. I mean,
mm,
of course, I've been a victim. I mean, when I moved
mm,
from DC to Chicago, I was a victim. When I moved from Chicago to
mhm,
here, the bottom fell. Of course, I was a victim. But, the darkness is an invitation
mm,
to reconnect with yourself.
mm,
And I think when you do that, the sum total of your ancestry, your life experiences, your skills, your talents, like who you are, you sort of fill a void in the world that only you can fill. If
mm.
Q Blackson didn't make that journey
Yeah,
from Europe to the
wonderful.
US, and
Yeah.
this void would always be there. There's
Mm.
no other person who can come and fill it.
Right. So true. Like, sometimes I've shared even on the podcast that when my mother passed away, I spoke to my mother's spirit, and I said, like, because she's like 11 years younger than my father. And I said, hey, why did you pass away first? Like, it doesn't make sense. And I was communicating, like I felt like I was communicating to her, right? And she said, I passed away to give you the complete karmic healing with your father. In that moment, I knew that I had to, like I had forgiven him, but we weren't pally pally. I was like, well, it takes two to tango. He can call me too. And I just like I dropped everything and I said, in honor of my mother and the opportunity, I'm going to call my father every day and just honor him. And doesn't matter if he gives me anything, it's not even, I love him. So I'm just going to love him so that when he dies, I'm at peace. And for the next 5 years, it's like I devoted myself like a yoga to just loving this man who was not there for me growing up. And I had every right to be like, well, I don't have to be there for him. And it was like in that moment, I shifted something and I just, I served my father. So I called him every day. I went to visit him 3 times a year in Ghana and just sat with him and gave him, you could say, everything he didn't give me. And there was such a healing that happened. And I really, really believe that this shifted the karma that enabled me to bring in my wife and my son. And I never forget when my wife got pregnant, he was the first person I told. And he said, oh, I had a dream. I had a dream you were going to have a son. And I told my wife, and I said, my father won't be around to see the son. She said, why? I said, because the karma's done. And now the paths are crossing. And a month later, I told him in October, in November, he was gone. So I really believe that there's so much to what you're saying. And so now, as people are listening to this, like what, if someone's in a place where they're starting to see, well, I think there might be some ancestral impact. What are some steps that they can take now to begin to shift or heal the ancestral lineage?
Yeah. So, just going back to what you just said, and you said, I call my father every day, but, you let go of the expectations. And that healing that the place of healing where we can arrive at within ourselves is letting go of our expectations, that we will be seen, that we will be acknowledged, that we will be validated, we will be supported, we will be encouraged, all of those that are hardwired in us. But it's our journey. I think this is encapsulated in this African proverb, actually, that says, when you cut your chains, you free yourself. When you cut your roots, you die. When you cut your chains, you free yourself. When you cut your roots, you die. What we tend to do is we tend to cut our roots. And when that happens, we're lonely, we're anxious, we're depressed. What we really need to do is to cut the chains, which is all the conditioning, the expectations. And as we do that, we reclaim our power, because we are also born to fulfill our individual purpose, our individuality, even if it's not very clear to us, but it comes out from our lineage, from our life experiences. It's a moving forward from all of that. And so honoring our ancestors is one way of making peace, by letting go of expectations. And I think if you can't, I sort of lay out some of these in the book.
Yeah.
Like having an altar, prayers for our ancestors. Alberto Viola was this Cuban American anthropologist. And when he went to South America, he said, in the Western tradition, we look at these altars and we think they're for praying to your ancestors. And he said, actually, no. These altars are a way of knowing where your ancestors are, because we're not actually praying to them, we're praying for them. And, this is what I realized, even in the Indian tradition, we're praying for the souls of our ancestors to be in light and peace and harmony. And as they lift up, we benefit. We do our own work, letting go of the expectations, letting go of the conditioning. And it is hard. I mean, there's no question about it. That's kind of where I use the flower essences, for support, because they make it easier. I like shortcuts.
That's beautiful. So you can use the altar, praying for the ancestors. What about if someone is carrying so much pain around something mom or granddad or someone did ancestrally, and they can't let go? of that pain. And they're like, screw my freaking ancestors, to hell with them.
Yeah.
Like, what do they do? How do they forgive? And let's say, let's say that what's happened is like, they don't see themselves as a victim, but they're just holding on.
Yeah.
What do they do? Because something really happened, they were raped or something occurred that was not okay, and they're like, I'm angry.
Yeah. I totally agree. And it is, and I think, we're not saying forgive.
Okay.
You're not saying I forgive my, father or grandfather for this abuse. We're not saying forgive.
Uh-huh.
What the ancestral healing is not about forgiveness, but about reclaiming your power
Mm,
so that you can move on, recognizing that this wrong that was done to you,
mm,
nobody in that ancestry is maybe sometimes going to admit it,
mm.
apologize, say sorry, say this was wrong. I mean, you're lucky if that might happen, but it may not happen. And even if it does happen, it may still never really quite heal that wound.
Yeah.
But you can actually heal inside of yourself by letting go of that expectation and working to reclaim your own power. And I think, you know, we forget that we have a spiritual connection, and the true mother and father actually is our spiritual mother and father.
Mm,
Mother Nature is the true mother.
mm,
She's the one who's healing us, providing with, us with food, flowers, medicines, herbs, like all sorts of things. And the more we are in nature, the more we can accept that mothering from nature, we can let go of the expectations of a physical mother and father because we are receiving that mothering. We have, even if we have this image of a sort of divine father or a spiritual father that is, authoritarian, somebody who punishes, but you could think of like a much more loving, forgiving, uh, um,
mm.
fathering energy. And then that energy nurtures you because one of the things is when we are carrying that anger, um, we are closing ourselves off to receiving.
Yes.
And the
Mm,
receiving is coming from spirit, whatever you want to call it, whether you want to call it
mm, mm,
universal consciousness, universal intelligence, guidance, support. We receive from there. And although the law of karma is, constantly in operation, there's also grace. And grace is coming in very subtle ways. And when we open ourselves up to the presence of grace, we open ourselves up to healing. And grace is like present in whispers. It couldn't be like somebody who comes and, maybe sits next to you on the bench and says something you needed to hear.
yes.
Somebody who just make, that phone call, somebody who, gives you flowers, might be a message on the back of the truck, might be the bird that
Mm,
comes to your bird feeder,
mm.
the dog that, sort of comes and nuzzles you at the rescue shelter. Grace appears in different ways. And it's opening ourselves up to grace that then we open ourselves up to receiving, because otherwise we are locked into looking for that receiving from only one place,
Right.
which is never there, which may never be there in this
Mm,
lifetime.
mm. It's beautiful. Beautiful. Can you speak to folks that, let's say someone was adopted? How does that affect the sort of ancestral? They were adopted, they never had parents, or they don't know their original parents in that ancestral lineage. Maybe they have a new family, but I'm curious how that works.
So, according to family constellation therapy, like both biological parents, step parents, adoptive parents, they're all
Mhm.
part of the family energy field. That's why
Mm,
when we use the word energy field, it's like everybody.
Everyone.
It's
Mhm.
not so narrow.
Mm.
And that sort of, encompasses the idea that you might have amazing adoptive parents.
Mm.
Their energy is like, that is grace,
Mm.
showing up for you.
Mm.
Your mother couldn't be there, but perhaps it was an invisible contract. You talked about your mother and that
Mhm.
invisible contract with the dad.
Mm.
So your mother, not yours, but a mother has
Mother.
has a contract with, I cannot be here anymore. So
Mm.
my child will be raised by you. And so, we have all these invisible contracts or karmic threads that are in play.
How much of our life is determined by that card? Like, is there a percentage? Is it 60%, 70%? Like, yeah, I'm curious. Like, how much?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, look at it this way. There's fate and then there's
Yeah,
destiny. So
destiny. Oh, okay.
yeah.
Tell me a bit about that.
Well, I mean, this is just how I see it. Like fate is the hand you were dealt with.
Okay.
And destiny is, what you make of your life.
Mm.
Open yourself up to
Mhm.
the guidance, to changing. I mean, this is what I as an economist, I wanted to change the world. I wanted to
Mm.
like, deal with poverty. I wanted to do that. Today, I'm like older. I don't know how much wiser, but I just know I need to change myself.
Mm.
I'm not here to change the world. I'm here to change myself, to ask myself, what do I need to do differently?
Mm.
What do I need to shift? Like, what do I need to learn? What do I need to understand? And the more I do that, like, I find the more guidance I get, the more support I get,
Mm.
the more peace I have within myself.
Beautiful. Um, what can we do for our kids? Let's say those listening, they have children and they say to you, okay, I really want to pass on to my children, karma-free energy, right? So that they can fly, without having to wade through the swamp of stuff. Are there things that we can do for the next generation? Can you give us some guidelines there, some tips there?
Coot, I'm not a perfect mother. If you were to ask me, I'd say absolutely not. But I think as parents, we just do the best we can. And as parents, um, I realized like I wanted to protect my kids. It's inevitable. As a parent, you
Mm.
wanted, but trauma is inevitable.
Mm.
Cannot protect my kids from trauma. They were born to grow, to heal, to face challenges. They'll have their own kids, God willing. Life is not going to be easy. Um, and so I've come to realize the most I can do is pray for their well being, pray for their protection. I can do my best to be a better parent so that I can express my love. Um, if I learn something, if my philosophy of life changes, I can use it in little moments to express that, to give them strength. And because they are going to fly and they will outlive me with, any luck. Um,
Mm.
so they have, they will have their own journeys. But if I can give them a sense of faith
Mm.
and if I can express my love and not burden them with my expectations,
Right.
maybe that's all I can do.
Mm. Mm.
And have them. I think as a parent, if we can help our children believe in themselves, and I
Mm,
think the nice thing is now there's so many parenting books, where they say
yeah.
don't praise the outcome, praise the effort. I think
Mm,
the little things, like one of the things I realized actually when working on this book, the phrase, "Oh, you make me so happy." What that
mm,
makes the kid feel like, if I do this, my parent will be happy. If I do this,
yeah. Yeah.
not you make me so happy, but just, I think this is amazing. Like, this shows that you have the
Mm,
tenacity, you have the perseverance, you'll be able to
mm,
draw on this strength. What is the lesson to learn here? A kid like has a fight in school, the best friend is broken up. What can we learn here? Something is good. And I think the important message, if a kid can get, is like, the universe has your back. Like,
mm,
the universe is supporting you.
mm,
It's funny because I was going somewhere recently. We were going on a family vacation after a really long time because my son had time off. And I had to carry my rollerboard, or whatever you call it, that rolling thing. And there was a ramp and some steps. And I was like, God, I can't lift this up over the steps. But I was trying to struggle to
mm.
wheel it up the ramp. And this young man came out of nowhere and just wheeled my suitcase up and lifted it up and put it. And my son says, Mom always says the universe is there to help her. And I was like, yeah, see that?
Mm,
So it's just, moments like that, that give your kids a framework of
mm,
philosophy that
mm,
you can pass down. But
mm.
we can't solve their problems. We can't
Yeah.
protect them from life
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you say, just, doing our best, um, and doing our best to prepare them for the world, because they have their lessons and they have their karma and they have their path. I was just telling someone the other day that I think if life is a school or university for our soul's growth and evolution, then parenting is probably one of the most challenging classrooms.
This
It's
is,
one of the most challenging. It's like the fullest experience in the seminar, right?
oh my God,
Yeah, yeah.
yes. And I think, I had to come to terms with the fact I will never be a perfect mother. For all I
Yes.
know, my kids will end up in therapy. But
Mm-hmm,
all I can
mm-hmm.
say is I just tried my best.
You did your best, yeah.
Your kids keep presenting you with challenges, and you have to evolve to handle
Mm,
their challenges.
mm,
Because as they sort of enter into life and as they sort of work and get older, they think they know better than you. They think they know
mm.
more than you. Sometimes I feel like I do that with my mom too. So, they'll always push our buttons, and we just kind of have to recognize that that's our growth edge.
Mm. The growth never ends. That's beautiful. Growth never ends. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So being there, loving them, um, I think in many ways they are our teachers too, you know. And so we think we're their teachers, but they're really our evolvers and teachers. So it's a beautiful thing. And I love
Yeah.
what you said too about the invisible contract that we have, with
Mhm.
parents, with family members, that invisible contract. It's a beautiful thing to think about, especially like when I think of my father and some of the things he didn't do for me. I can now see how it was a soul contract teaching. Like there was this understanding, like, hey, I had this moment, and when I was in meditation a while back, when I saw my father, I saw his soul, and I saw like we've been together so many times and we've come back, and it was like, oh, my old friend, we're back together in this incarnation. And it was the sense of like, wow, what an interesting play we chose to do this time, you know and 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 I remember like speaking to my father's soul, like in this meditation, saying, you almost got me on this one. Like you almost made me forget who you really are. That was good. That was really good. And it was a profound moment of like soul realization. And so I really feel like we have these these contracts, and I got to the point where I could see, like, it wasn't easy because it took decades of my life, but I could see how he was perfect for my growth and evolution, and forced me to evolve and grow in ways and do the healing in ways. So that now when I look at my son, like it's like I can see that my son is a manifestation of the work I've done. And so,
yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. And yeah, it's coming to that space of acceptance of what is, which is so hard for so many of us. Just accepting the reality of what is. And however, whether it's in meditation and you see the contract, or you see the soul, hear the soul conversation, it's when we can expand our perception of reality as we are seeing it. We open the portal for like healing. And your son sounds like, this is a testimony to your healing. It's like the work you've done, which is now available for the next generation.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I was in I was in Japan. My mother's Japanese, so I was in Japan 3 weeks ago, and I introduced my son to my aunt, who's my mother's past, so my mother's eldest sister. And she like, I never thought she was a deep person. She was never into spiritual stuff, but she looked at my son and she said, he looks just like you when you were a kid. And then she said, what's beautiful is now you get to play with him in the way your father didn't play with you, and do it differently,
Wow.
And it was just like a confirmation of like
Yeah.
ancestral healing. Like this, the part of the healing of the lineage is I get to do it differently with him and create a whole new energy moving forward. It's so important. This work. Are there any other, like, so you talked about being in nature, the altar, praying for praying for the ancestors. Are there any other like simple things that people can sort of take and use from this conversation, also in terms of, oh, here's something I can do, practically, that I can do in terms of healing the ancestral line?
Yeah, so if you can express gratitude for your ancestors,
okay,
by whether you light a candle for them or you do offer something in service, just like gratitude for the gift of the challenge, for all the blessings we sort of see or don't see, but also for the gifts of the challenges that we have received, and asking, for support or guidance from them if you feel like it. If not, just ask the universe for support and guidance. That allows the energy to shift.
Nice.
Because then you start noticing, then we open up. When gratitude is a receiving energy, it's like, Mother Nature, receiving expansive energy, and it lifts us and carries us. And then we start to see that we are actually being taken care of. I have to say that I'm going to make a plug for this. I don't sell any flower essences because I feel people can just buy them on Amazon.
Yeah.
They're so cheap. Willow flower essence releases the feeling of victimhood. So willow releases victimhood, and holly releases anger and suspicion and jealousy. So willow and holly are two powerful essences.
And people can just buy those particular holly and willow flower essences and just take drops.
Yes.
Just as a side question, like, how do flower essences work? Like, is it the energy of flowers, the frequency of like?
Yeah. So, for thousands of years, dew was considered sacred. I mean, the Egyptians used it. In India, they used it. Like Celtics use it. German mystics use it. But it's really challenging to collect dew. So in the 1930s, there was a British surgeon, Dr. Bach, and he found a way to preserve the energy the energetic quality of the flowers, the energetic emotional healing quality of the flowers. And flowers are sort of the highest expression
Mhm.
of the energy of the earth. You give them in,
Yeah, yeah.
someone, when we pray for someone, so those flowers, so willow flowers and holly flowers, it's just the energy of the flower. And there
Mm.
is the flower is picked at its peak, floated in a crystal bowl under a clear sky, in water, spring water, underground water. And then the flowers are taken out when they wilt. They've released their energy, and that water is preserved with brandy. And that's really all the flower essence is. It's the emotional, energetic, healing property of the flower.
Wow.
And it's been
Wow.
around for at least 100
Yeah,
years.
yeah, yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, folks, you heard it. That tip. Willow helps to release victim energy and holly anger. Powerful.
Yeah.
And I've loved this conversation so much. I think that the topic is so important. The work you're doing is so important. The book about healing ancestors, so important. I hope everyone checks out your work and the book. Final question. If you've said so much, but if you were to think back through your life and look at three of the most important life lessons that you've learned, and obviously there's more than three, but if you were to distill it into the essence of three of like, if you could only pass these three wisdoms to your children, it's like, okay, kids, here's the three most important things I've learned that I want to pass to you. What would the three keys be?
I would say your ancestors impact your life. So honor your ancestral lineages.
Mm,
Um, I would tell them that you cannot change the past,
mm,
but you can change how you carry it. And that is something you can do. And the last thing I would tell them is that, um, always see what life is teaching you, because it's returning you to yourself, to reclaiming your power. It's bringing you home to yourself.
mm.
And that is what life is doing with you all the time. It's bringing you home to yourself.
Beautiful. Powerful. Folks, you heard it. Three keys from Anuradha. Three keys, very powerful keys. Beautiful. We've had a deep and wide-ranging conversation today. I want to thank you for just showing up and sharing your gifts with the world and being courageous. Where can people find you and connect with you? What's the best website? Where can people get the book? Please share.
The website is healyourancestral.roots.com. The book is available by the same title on Amazon or any other places where books are sold. And and it's been a pleasure to be with you, Koot. I have learned so much from you. I've loved hearing your story, your experiences.
Such a joy, such a joy. Folks, I hope you feel her soul, her spirit, her heart. Thank you for your generosity and just sharing. I can't wait to dive into this book myself. Folks, I definitely encourage all of you to check out the book, check out her work, check out her website. We're going to put all of that in the show notes, so check it out there. Send me an email, kootblackson@kootblackson.com. I want to hear your key takeaways from today's episode. Send this episode to everyone in your life that you feel needs it. I think everybody needs to hear today's episode. Until next week, love now.